again, for purposes of the camera, my name is John Paris. I appreciate you coming out and taking time out of your afternoon to join us. For those watching from the comforts of their own home, this is Michelle. Is your last name pronounced Shafe?
Shafe.
Michele Shafe. She is running for re-election as Clark County Assessor. When we get into, it's always interesting when we get into assessor versus controller versus treasurer, these more specialized jobs for the people on the dais and perhaps more importantly any voters who may be watching this. What exactly are the job duties of our county assessor, since you have been in that position as our official assessor for the last 4 years?
Correct. The job of the assessor, the primary job, is to discover, list, and value. That means discover properties that are out there, list them on the tax roll, and put a valuation on them. Other things that our office does is everything that the recorder records that has to do with a change of ownership or a map splitting parcels, that comes to us. We assign the parcel numbers. We also change the name and address on the records. So the assessor's office has the official address for county records purposes. The other thing that we do is we have our customer service division, and that division works with personal exemptions. There's exemptions for veterans, disabled veterans, surviving spouses, and the blind. And the exemption holder can use that exemption on their personal property, their real property, their home, or their vehicle at DMV.
Now, prior to being elected 4 years ago, you were to this position. You were the assistant director at the office for 13 years, and you've been there for even longer than that. How long have you been with the assessor's office?
Almost 19 years with the assessor's office.
Of pure fun, I'm sure.
It's been great. It's been great. Before that, I was with the county finance department, and I worked on budgets for the county. And it was interesting because we would get the assessed valuation numbers, so we would know how much would be available to budget for a department. And I always wondered how that assessed valuation number came about. So eventually I was the budget analyst for the assessor's office and saw how the whole process went, how they have state certified appraisers that go out and value all the property. And I also learned about personal property, which was something I wasn't aware of, and that is for manufactured homes, billboards, aircraft, and businesses. And so all of that was fascinating. So when my boss at the time, who was Guy Hobbs, decided to leave the county and go into private practice, he talked to me and he said, "Where would you like to go? Which department would you like to go?" Because he knew I didn't want to stay in finance forever. And I said, "I really like the assessor's office. Very interesting. The work they do, I find fascinating." So that's how I ended up there.
Well, be careful what you wish for.
Yes.
Now it's your baby. Now, in the past 4 years, during your first term, you instituted a lot of different programs to make the assessment process a little more transparent, with various videos being posted online or in other forums. What ideas do you have, assuming you are re-elected, to make the assessor's office a little more accessible to the public in general?
My first priority as far as that goes is being able to accept payment over the website, as well as debit and credit cards in either the field or at the office. And I've been waiting for this for a few years because the county said, "Hold off, we're going to have one vendor for the debit and credit cards, so the fees are less for the public." So I said, okay. 4 years later, they don't have a vendor. So beginning of next year, I'm going to go with the same vendor that the recorder and that the Department of Business License is using. So we will be able to do that, and those that have personal property tax bills, like many businesses, would be able to have the option to pay that on the internet. We will still accept cash and checks as well, that's fine, but if they would like to pay with a credit card, we'll be able to do that. Another thing that we're working on is for exemption holders to be able to use their exemption at DMV using the internet as well. Currently, if you go on the DMV site, you'll see a box that says enter your exemption code, and a lot of the other counties, you have an exemption code you can use. Clark County, we don't have that yet, We were waiting because we just brought up a new billing and collection system, which includes the exemptions. And as soon as that's stable, which right now it's, you always
Testing.
have kinks in a new system, we want to make sure no one gets shorted any exemption money. So as soon as that's up and running, we hope that'll be stable by the end of the year. And then we'll hook into DMV. So then exemption holders will have an option. If they don't want to use the internet and prefer to get a paper document, that would be fine. We'd still mail them out the voucher. And if they would prefer to use the internet, we will send them their postcard like we do every year for renewal, and then they just enter that code online and they'll be able to use the voucher that way. So it'll make it easier.
Okay.
And the third thing that we're working on is, right now we have about half of the building sketch footprints, so not details of a building, but just the outline of buildings and homes. We have about half of them up online, and we're going to get the other half up online. So anyone who wants to see, the size of something as far as the footprint will be able to have that. That's been a really important thing to realtors and of course private appraisers. They're always asking for that. And currently the ones that we don't have online, they call us, then we need to pull somebody off to pull it from the record and fax it over to them, and sometimes they can't read it, so it'll make it a lot easier just to have that online so they can
What
get
exactly is
it.
the exemption thing that you're talking about?
These are personal exemptions,
Yeah.
and we have it for veterans, disabled veterans, surviving spouses, and the blind. And there are various amounts depending on which category it is. For example, at DMV, surviving spouse, it's worth about $60 off of the government services tax at DMV, where for a veteran, it's $125 off. So it's a really worthwhile program. We try to advertise it. We go to fairs and senior fairs and all kinds of places and hand out brochures for it. So that's something that is available to the public and saves on their taxes if they choose to use it.
All these property records are public records. It's
They
not
are.
really, anybody can walk in there and look at someone's property and all that.
You can actually look it up on the website. Yeah, the legislature passed a law that made all of that public
Public
information.
record.
Mhm.
It's legislative.
Mhm. So we have people that call us and they say, how do I not have my name on the record? And right now there's a law that is for police officers and judges where there's a court order done, and then we will remove their name from the record. The property will show, but it'll say taxpayer as the name. That's not available for anyone else unless you know a judge who will give us a court order. We would be happy with that. What we recommend is to put the property in a trust with, obviously not your so-and-so family trust, make up some other name that people wouldn't know, and that works as well. And the other thing that we do is, when you have a trust, you have trustees. If you would like us to hide the trustees when it publishes to the website, we can do that. We just need a phone call and we can take that off.
So removing and I'm sorry if you have follow-up, removing the trustees does not require a court order.
No,
Okay.
removing the trustees does
Just a
not.
request.
So that's a good way to have property that you own where if someone was trying to look it up under your name, they
Right.
wouldn't be able to find it.
And I'm sorry if you had a follow-up, Freddie, I just wanted to
Okay.
ask about that
Well,
situation.
Just going back on assessing properties, do you actually send an assessor to a property? Or you just look at like one neighborhood and says, assess the value of that
We
neighborhood?
use,
how do you exactly,
yeah,
I'm just curious
Nevada is a very unique state. We're the only state that's not at market value. We're on a cost basis. So what that means is when we do our reappraisal, which is a mass appraisal, and you're right, we don't
So it's
look
a
at
mass
every
appraisal.
single home. It's a mass appraisal. So in a tract neighborhood, we would look at model matches. We would look at, what's going on there as far as the sales. Now, what we do with the sales is different than any other state. We don't set the value based on the sales. We use the sales to test our replacement costs. And so this is what we have to do. We look at the market value of the land, and then it's the replacement cost of the building or the home, less a statutory depreciation of 1.5% per year up to 50 years. So an older home could be 75% depreciated on the improvement side, and then we have the market value of the land. And this was done by the legislature back in 1981, and the purpose of that was to take some of the burden off of the homeowners and put more towards the tourists. So that is when the state sales tax went from 3.5 cents to 5 3/4 overnight, and the property tax rate dropped from $5 down to a maximum of $3.64. And in Clark County, no one is at $3.64. I think the most expensive districts are in North Las Vegas, and they're probably $3.34, $3.35 per 100.
The reason I asked this is there was one time that I called regarding a property that I own, you know, with the assessed value and everything, and I says, how come this was assessed this way? Well, one assessor, I guess, says different thing, and one assessor says different thing. The one that assessed the property says this is what it's assessed for. I spoke to another assessor saying, I don't know why, it seemed like it's not properly assessed or something like that. So I was just wondering, that's why I asked you, if it was assessed on individual property or just on, as you said, it's just
It's mass appraisal, so, you know, for homes, we look at the subdivisions. And then for custom homes, we have to look at those a little bit differently because they're so different. And then for businesses, it's even more different. We still have to do the cost approach, but then we look at what rents are going for in the area, things like that. Some businesses might bring in their income, you know, and I'm talking about a commercial building as far as vacancies and income, and we'll use that to make sure that our taxable value does not exceed the market value.
how come some property has a cap value and some property doesn't have a cap value?
The cap depends on the higher amount of either taxes as assessed or 3% more. And for this year, it's 3% for both the general cap and the homeowner's cap. And there were a few years where, say you had a rental house and the taxes were increasing 8% a year, and it was next door to a house just like it that was always owner occupied, and the taxes increased 3% a year. During those years, the tax bills could be different. However, when everything fell, then the properties didn't need that cap protection because taxes as assessed was less than 3% more each year. And now that things are going back up, that 8% general cap has actually fallen to 3% now. There's a very complicated formula that the legislature has. It's a two-part formula for the general cap. They look at 10 years of assessed valuation growth, okay, which for Clark County, because we had big years and then we had some declining years, that number ended up to be 1.4%. So they look at that versus 2 times CPI. CPI was 1.5%. So you have 1.4 versus 3. So they take the greater of, so that would be the 3, and then you take the lesser of, the 3 or the 8. So in this case, it ended up being 3. So for next year, one of the big years that we had is going to drop off. So next year, the 10-year rolling will be probably less than 1.4. However, the CPI will probably be more than 1.5%. I believe it's just over 2% right now. So next year's general cap will probably be 4 something. Probably no more than 5, but it won't be 8, which is good for everyone who has to pay the taxes.
Okay, I do have one question. For the you said for the police officers, public official, that they're concerned about safety or privacy. That's all good. Now for trustees, they can all request to do that. But if someone have committed fraud, do you require a court order to go in to search the database for an individual that hires the, let's say, property or what have you.
So if someone changed it into a trust,
Yeah.
And someone
Let's
asks us
suppose
to-
someone have been committed fraud,
Uh-huh.
right? And
well, if law enforcement's involved, if they come to us, or FBI or Attorney General, we will provide them whatever they need.
I see.
I'm just talking about what's out there on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, there's security features whether to go after the person recorded or to protect the person also on record. So are there safety measures, security measures in place as far as information is concerned?
Well, now you're getting into the recorder's office.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You can ask Debbie that.
Debbie's up next, and we can go after her.
But I believe that they do, I believe that they do work with the Attorney
Because
General.
I thought,
but
you
you
know,
can ask her.
I was alluding to his question
Yes.
where, you know, the information in the internet,
Mhm.
is there some protection as far as my information there? And also a way to get back at me if, as you mentioned, there are some fraudulent information that was written there. So it worked both ways.
Right.
Good. Well, we
Yeah.
put
But
that
it's,
down.
it's state laws
You
why
have
all of
to-
that is out there, yes.
Okay.
Yes. I know
Thank
we
you,
get a
thank
lot
you.
of people moving from other places, and I guess in their state, it's
Mhm.
not public information. In Nevada, it is.
Well, they were talking about identity theft and everything, and yet these are publicly provided. Your address and what you own and everything. I mean, it just kind of make, to me, it just doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? You are volunteering. I mean, hey, here, you could look.
By the same token, Michelle, as she indicated, it's the state legislature mandated it.
I understand.
So-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
It's not her fault exactly.
Yeah, no,
We can't totally blame her.
No, I know that. It's just
Well,
that.
the other
to me,
thing,
it's-
yeah, the other thing that we
I
do
understand.
is any of the deeds that we bring over from the recorder's office, we redact the signatures, social
Oh,
security,
see,
bank
that's what I'm saying.
account.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you
we
do that.
redact
Okay.
that.
That's what I was trying to
I
Yeah.
don't know what her policies are, but what we've been doing is since 1999, when she sends us these deeds electronically, we keep them on our site as well. So when you go up to look, when you go to look at your property, you can look at it and then you can click a link that'll take you to the deed. And so because that is showing,
Yes.
we have the,
Cross out all those
Yes.
pertinent information regarding a particular
Mhm.
person.
you
But-
still have the name and address, but you're not going to have bank account numbers and things like that.
So by and large, we have honest people in Nevada.
I wouldn't
And there-
necessarily extrapolate
and
that
there's a
from
lot
that
of,
response.
and there's a lot of crooks in California.
No,
That they
we just
will die.
deal with it because we can't control
That's,
it.
that's good to know though,
Yeah.
that you know, as a safety measure, as a security measure,
Ours-
you
ours are
delete those
redacted.
information out.
Mhm.